Hello everyone, welcome to Weeb the People, a podcast dedicated to all things anime, from the perspectives of an advanced viewer, casual, and beginner. I'm your host, Daniel.
Unless you own a cat, toilet rolls go forward, not under. My name is Malcolm.
Yeah.
Hi.
Forward.
I was
Over,
adjusting my
not
camera
under.
while
Yeah.
we were talking. My name's Jake.
I said forward, and I was
Yeah.
like, that doesn't make sense.
Well,
I
no,
meant
I was
over.
like stretching, and then I was like, my camera frame is just like very different than theirs. Yes, it's very tilted. Hello,
Hey, by episode
everyone.
1.
By episode 100, we're just going to be showing midriff. So get ready,
Oh.
folks.
Yep,
I hope
the
I
you
have
Britney
six
Spears
pop
era
tops,
is back,
six-pack.
baby. I'm ready to show it.
I got my belly button pierced just for you guys.
Well, in
Absolutely
today's
not.
episode, before we get too derailed, we'll be talking about the history and origins of animation studio White Fox, and dig a little deeper into what exactly CGI animation is, the pros and cons of it, and why we're even talking about those two. So yeah, if you have any questions for us, feel free to DM us on any of our social medias. So with that,
Quick spoiler alert, we have a special guest, George Lucas, to explain all the shitty things you will ruin with CGI. And also in the studio, Jar Jar Binks.
Guys, Jar Jar is the key to all of this.
Darth
Jar
Jar
Jar.
Jar, bro.
He
Never
really
forget.
said that.
Never
He
forget.
really said that.
But yes, so first off, with Studio White Fox, let's dive into that. So with White Fox Company Limited, or simply Studio White Fox, was founded in April 2007 by Gaku Iwasu, who was a former production assistant and later established his own Team Iwasu over at OLM Inc., which was formerly known as Oriental Light and Magic, until his team of animators, like his own team or whatever, they split off and established themselves independently as White Fox.
They staged a coup and
Yes.
failed, so they had to start somewhere else. That's not true.
Question.
No,
Daniel, why are we talking about White Fox?
because so we're talking about White Fox and we're going to be talking about CGI. Due to, I was going to say this later, but you just ruined my mojo. But
I just wanted to tie in some themes, give people some context, maybe a 5-minute overview of why we're talking about it.
no.
Okay.
But yeah, we're doing it because
I ruined the ambiance and the twist.
Our next show watch is going to be Goblin Slayer, Goblin's Crown. So both of those, White Fox is the one who animated it, and I wanted to talk
Nice.
more about CGI and the animation that they use because that's like a big point that I wanted to discuss in Goblin Slayer when we watch it. So yeah, I kind of want to provide the ground layer and the foundation for that, just
Cool.
so you know what I'm talking about when I refer to certain words or terminologies and stuff. Are you happy now, Jake?
I am happy, satisfied. Thank you, Daniel, for that context.
Yeah, bro.
Let's
no problem.
continue. I want to learn.
Yes. So yes. Fun fact. So I know I use Company Limited as like the
The legal term.
the legal term, right? But in Japan, OLM and White Fox are known as Kabushiki Gaisha, and it's a type of company defined under the Companies Act of Japan. And most of the time, it's commonly translated as like a stock company, joint stock company, or stock corporation. But yeah, we're gonna use Company Limited here. That's what I found on Wikipedia. So boom, yeah.
That's what Eric from his basement told us what we should call him.
Hell yeah, because yeah, I went to White Fox's website, but unlike with Studio Mappa, White Fox did not have a English version of their website, so
Serves us right.
I
Fuck
was
America.
like, I have no idea what most of this stuff means.
Did you do like the Google Translate and like phrases all just got like destroyed?
Yeah, it was bad, bro. So I was just like,
Nice.
yeah, I'm not gonna learn anything here, unfortunately. So yes, but that's just a little fun fact. Moving on, White Fox is based in Tokyo, Japan, and actually has a subsidiary called Studio Bind, which the studio was founded in November 2018 and is a joint venture between White Fox and Egg Firm.
Binds.
What?
Now say that out loud, Jake. I think it got lost. Say it out.
What?
Say it again. Say it with your chest.
Yeah, voice it with the chest.
Studio-
Coward.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Studio Binds, which is a joint venture by White Fox and Amanda Bynes.
Oh,
Oh,
that's pretty good.
there you go. Um, and
Sorry.
Egg Firm, a company dealing in the production, planning, and management of anime. White Fox, for those of you that don't know, has a super heavy hitter resume in anything that they've either mainly produced, mainly animated, or that they helped animate. Like the big names that we know of, ReZero, Starting Life in Another World, Akame ga Kill, Steins Gate, Goblin Slayer, just to name a few. After their founding, the first production was an anime for White Fox. That is, was an anime series called Tears to Tiara, which was based off of an adult tactical role playing game of the same name. White Fox is also responsible for animating, like I said, our next movie watch, Goblin Slayer, Goblin's Crown. And when in a rare twist of things, because most of the time, whenever you think of anime movies and stuff, they're like their own standalone thing. But this time around, Goblin's Crown is actually a direct sequel and is considered canon to the series. So everything that happens in the movie, like, is part of the actual canon and lore of the actual series.
So it's got the Kingdom Hearts syndrome where they'll do a bunch of spin-offs and you think you don't need to watch it and you don't need to buy or spend $60, but you fucking have to.
But you do.
or else
You
you'll get
bet you.
lost.
But yes, so that's like a nice breath of fresh air, because most of the time, like, for example, My Hero Academia movies, you watch them, they're fun, don't get me wrong, but they're not canon. It's just little fun side stories where Deku does his own thing with his own friends, whatever, and then never mentioned.
Here's our very expensive fanfic movie.
That's basically what most of them are. So that's nice to have that for Goblin Slayer. But yes, that's basically the origin, background, whatever, of Studio White Fox. Any questions, comments, concerns before we go into the real meat and potatoes of this episode?
No, let's get into the meat and potatoes. I'm hungry.
Did we watch Demon Slayer on this show, or was that just something I did myself?
Yeah, that's just something you and I did.
Okay, because
We
I was going to
watched-
say,
Goblin Slayer.
Yeah.
Demon Slayer also has a movie coming out that is canonical.
Yes, it is.
So, just
Wow.
It was made by
two.
Ufotable, animated by Ufotable. So
So, Ufotable, if you want to throw some money our way, we will talk about every anime you've ever done, starting with the Fate series, because Daniel will orgasm on the podcast. And I will not edit it out.
nope.
I'll mute my headphones, so.
All right. Yeah. So for this next part, if you've been a long listener of the show, you know that I mentioned the term CGI a lot. I mentioned it when we referred to like 3D modeling and stuff. But in case you like listen to me say that and you're just like I never knew what he meant by that, now is finally the time. So I'm gonna try not to get too jargony with this, because when doing the research for this and searching for it, it definitely gets pretty deep divey. So I'll try to format it in like a explain like I'm 5 Reddit thread format. So
Nice.
yeah,
Let's start by saying what CGI is, because I'm thinking Chris gains in experience.
inexperienced.
He's not a real person.
Chip
Yeah.
Gaines Incorporated.
Gains. Ah,
So
okay.
let's start from the top. Computer animation is the process used for digitally generating animated images. All right. CGI, which stands for Computer Generated Imagery, is an animation.
Community generated.
Yeah, community generated, guys.
It's him over there. He draws a little picture. And then you've got
Generated
Robbie over
imagery.
here.
It's open sourced, actually. No,
That's how we got Sonic the Hedgehog.
computer generated imagery, and is an animation technique that is used for both static and dynamic or moving scenes in animation. So whenever I'm going to use the term CGI, I'm going to be mostly referring it to the use of 3D animation in a 2D setting in anime. Obviously, there's 3D modeling within other frameworks. Obviously, you have Disney, Pixar, their movies with their 3D animation, but this is solely in the context of anime that I'll be using and discussing it in. So, yeah, moving on. Computer animation overall is somewhat of like a successor to stop motion techniques. So think either Coraline, more anime, think about Rilakuman Kaoru or Thunderbolt Fantasy, but in the sense that it uses 3D models, but instead of them being puppets and being displayed on like a real life background that somebody created, the models are generated via computer and either displayed on a 2D or 3D background. A pro of CGI and something that's super useful is that once the model is developed, it's actually much easier to manipulate said model in whatever sequence you want it to move. With a lot of the times, if you ever want to really, like in a fight scene, for example, if you ever want to like display a certain sequence of movements and stuff, you can really just use motion capture and then have it on a real life person, have all the sensors on them, whatever, they're doing the sequences, whatnot, and then at that point, you can just actually translate that to the system and the model and just boom, throw that onto the background.
Just hire Andy Serkis. He'll
Andy
literally
Serkis
do
makes
anything.
all of your anime.
Absolutely, yeah.
I will not argue with this. I think that's the best plan, really.
Man, imagine Andrew Serkis pretending to be an anime character, saying Japanese phrases.
Like if they did a 3D rendition or a CGI rendition of Kill la Kill, and he played every character.
Oh, no.
Andy Serkis as Mako.
Andy Serkis,
A million.
big ass.
Andy Serkis, I get it.
Where was I? So by using 3D modeling, you save a lot of time rather than the old days of basically having to animate every single shot whenever you wanted to make your character. So that is a pro. That's like the brief overview of what CGI is and what I'm going to be using it for. So CGI equals 3D modeling most of the time in a 2D background. That's the context I'm going to be using it in.
Put Wallace and Gromit out of business. And Chicken Run.
And
And all that other stuff.
Any questions, comments, concerns before we...
Yeah, Daniel, this would be the perfect time to mention that a good example of 3D animation would be Knights of Sidonia, right?
All right, any other questions from the audience before we...
No? Okay, all right.
No, but yes, it is the use of 3D animation, Knights of
I
Sidonia.
loaded the question there when I said it was a good
When you said a good example, that's all I was like, no.
Well, you should have said it was Ratatouille. That
is.
is God tier anime.
It really
In
is. It's
CGI.
the best mecha anime of all time.
Easily.
But yes, if we're being serious, yes, Knights of Sidonia is an example. Not a good example, but it is an example of CGI. But yes, so that's very brief. We'll touch base back on it in a little bit later. But for now, I want to make a clear distinction. So whenever you think of older anime, so let's think about when we watched Akira, or if you've seen like Cowboy Bebop, Ghost in the Shell, Trigun, right? It has this older anime feel to it. And a lot of the times people can't really explain what that feel is. It's just like you look at it and you're like, oh, it reminds you of older anime time. But what actually created that older anime feel, right? And that was when almost basically every single scene, every single shot that you see was stitched together by people drawing it out, going to town on this, and then stitching them together in frames. So it gives you that older anime feel because everything was hand drawn. Yes, they used computer techniques to maybe smooth things out or whatever, but for the most part, no, everything was just flat out. You drew it, you uploaded it, and then like you fixed up a little bit, touched up a little bit, bam, you're good to go. But that took up so much freaking time because then the artists, the drawers, what have you, they have to basically draw every single scene of this movie. Whereas nowadays, moving on, we have what's called computer assisted animation. So kind of backtracking a little bit. I mentioned that CGI can be used in both 2D and a 3D setting. CGI mostly being like in a 3D modeling setting, but you can use CGI in both 2D and 3D settings. So the difference between that is what's called computer assisted animation and computer generated animation, right? So nowadays, there's this really freaking cool technology, like probably like it was game changing, and it's
LimeWire.
LimeWire. Oh yes, bring us back to the good old days. That's so dumb.
Got it.
So what this process was, or this process is called, is tweening or morphing, depending on like what you like hear from or whatever. I'm gonna use tweening. That's the term I've mostly heard about. So, but basically the way it works is that now animators, instead of having to draw every single frame like we discussed before, animators now only have to draw certain keyframes. So an example of that can be, let's say characters are fighting, whatever, and then the screen lingers on the screen for like a second or two, right? And it's like a dynamic scene with the characters maybe like fighting or whatever, but it's a certain scene that you see and the screen lingers on it for a while, and then the characters like fight and move over to another side of the screen. All right, so that lingering is the keyframe, but then not the key blade, but the keyframe, and
Yep, you got that,
What
Malcolm?
a fucking mistake. Tetsuya Nomura, come fight me. You know where I'm at.
I was hoping I would get a response from you, Malcolm. It took a little
Absolutely
bit,
not. God.
but the in between motions and the frames and the differences of the scenes, what have you, the characters, those can actually be automatically calculated by the computer. So then you set multiple keyframes within a fight, and those are like your checkpoints, basically. The checkpoints of, okay, I want this scene to like clearly show this, but the in betweens, I want you to go in this general direction, computer. Okay, it'll calculate like, all right, let's say the characters have to move from here to here. Let's randomly calculate a path in this general direction, and those are the frames in between. Does that make sense?
That's what the tween and tweening stands for.
It's like the in
Makes
between
sense.
phases of your life before you
Okay.
become a teenager, and then
I was trying to figure out a way to thread that joke, but thank you guys for figuring it out, because I was just sitting here like spinning my wheels. Yeah, there's nothing here.
making
You're
my way
like,
downtown.
Let me parse through all the trauma of middle and high school. No, it's real thick.
Ah, damn it.
It's not
It's
funny.
viscous.
It's just bad.
Oh, man.
Ah.
Hey, Jerry. Yeah, I need another appointment on Wednesday. I just unearthed a lot of stuff because of an anime podcast. Yeah, you know.
So not only can this be used in like crazy fight sequences, but on the opposite side of animation spectrum, you can do when characters are talking. So for the most part, when characters are talking to each other, I mean, they're not moving that much, right? So instead of having, like, let's say if the character's mouth is moving when they're talking, instead of having to draw every single one of those frames of a different like mouth movement, instead it's like, okay, I want a keyframe could be the character not talking. Okay, maybe the character has an open vowel as they're talking, but the in-betweens of that can be just calculated. And it could just be, okay, the character's just moving their mouths, whatever, instead of having to animate or draw every single frame of that. So what that allows for is a much more cost-efficient way of being able to animate and produce more anime. It's never been before in our lifetimes cheaper or more efficient to make. However, this brings up a con, multiple cons, right? So
Wrath of cons.
Wrath of cons, cons a grill.
Hey, Conf Girl. Hey, what's up? How we doing, Valley?
Yeah,
Represent.
represent Puro Pinche 956, bro.
Yeah, you can say that. I can. I'm not from there.
You're an honored guest.
Thank you.
Let's see. So cons, right? Let's take a modern anime, for example. We know Goblin Slayer, right? Think about any anime that come out in recent seasons, recent years. I think of, Goblin Slayer. I think of Rising of the Shield Hero. Like, shows that are good, don't get me wrong. They're not terrible shows, they're not bad shows, right? But in these shows, whenever you look at the animation, right? It's more, you don't look at these shows and think, "Oh wow, I get that same old anime aesthetic as, say, something like Akira, Ghost in the Shell, Cowboy Bebop," right? The difference in animation and the animation technique that they use is night and day. Some prefer the old anime feel to it, the old look. Some of it's more smooth. Like, I know in Cowboy Bebop, a lot of the fight scenes are like gorgeously smooth. It's beautiful to look at. But others like the more newer feel to anime and like what anime is starting to look like. And I think there's pros and cons to both. If you prefer that older anime aesthetic, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Unfortunately, that's going out the window just because it's much more expensive and much more time consuming to make an anime in that older method than, say, computer assisted animation nowadays. Because nowadays,
These kids don't appreciate
they don't
anime.
appreciate, because back in my day, because then
We did everything harder because we're fucking masochists. Yeah, I'm talking to you, boomers.
Oh,
I'm
Anyway.
doing it.
but
I'm saying it.
even though this older anime is going out of style, you have to look at it from the studio's point of view, the company's point of view, right? what if your anime flops? What about having to pay the artist for every single frame that they make? What about any production errors that happen, any inconsistencies, any delays, what have you? And that's not to say that these things don't happen in modern anime, right? But the negative is nowhere near as bad as it used to be. And what I mean by that is, why gamble using the older method? Like, let's say if you don't know if this anime is going to be amazing or if it's going to flop, right? Instead of pouring all this time, money, and effort into the older animation style, right? Why not simply go the computer route, pump out 20, 30 animes per season and call it a day? Boom. Even if your anime flops, don't worry. We, meaning the studio in this case, either have another anime lined up in this same anime season, or definitely have more later on in future seasons in the year or whatever. So like, there's more. It's easier to just pump out more anime, more content in this newer age method than the older method, even though we lose that older aesthetic. Right? Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, unless you're Miyazaki, no one's gonna put that kind of money into hand drawing everything.
Right, exactly. Because how do you know your ROI? How do you know it's going to be really good? How do you know if it's not going to flop? Right? And the only one that I can think about in recent times that comes to the top of my mind is something like Megalobox. Because Megalobox has like a older anime aesthetic to it when looking at it. I mean, obviously you can still tell it's like a newer made anime, but at the same time it has that older anime aesthetic feel. Right?
Yeah, it definitely had the older feel. Yeah, and that makes sense. Like, they don't want to take a gamble, sink a whole bunch of money in animation effort when you can see how the story's going to pay out with way less work, and then be able to finish it out just using computer assists. That makes sense.
Right. And this going a little off the track here, this kind of goes into what we call winning the anime lottery. So what I mean by that is, like, certain studios are known for certain things. I'm going to, case in point, Ufotable. Ufotable, easily one of my most favorite animation studios of all time. I love everything that they put out. Even if the show, like, sucks, the animation is god tier gorgeous. Like, it looks beautiful.
It's garbage with a little glitter on it.
It's basically gold garbage bag, and that's worst case scenario, right? But because then look at Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer, I think, when reading the manga's good. Don't get me wrong, but Ufotable brought a certain aesthetic.
Je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi, if you will. Like, looking at Ufotable's work in Demon Slayer is simply it's amazing. It brought Demon Slayer to another next gen level. Like, Malcolm can agree with me because he's watched the show.
It fucking slaps.
But it's amazing. Like, it looks gorgeous on top of an already solid story foundation. So who knows how it would have turned out? Would it have been as popular if another studio have gotten it? Who knows? Like, maybe if someone like Studio Dean back in the terrible days when they made the first Fate adaptation, if it was on that level, then Demon Slayer would have been like thrown in the trash already. So who knows? But yeah, that's just like a little thing, because like studios have animators, but then they have people who, each studio has like certain people who are experienced in some other things. So maybe they're experienced in background animation, maybe there's their specialties in special effects or whatever. So each studio is different and has a different feel to it, and you can look at it in their works, and a lot of the times it bleeds over. Sometimes, however, if you notice like a big exodus of people, for example OLM, and when Timo Wasu left, it's like a whole different aesthetic left, because now you don't associate it with the company, you associate it with, oh, it's this group of animators, but now they're not there in the company anymore, so now that company or that studio doesn't have that same feel anymore.
Yep. Yep. You can definitely tell when like certain people leave works, when they like step away for a little bit or have left entirely, and like their influence will make a difference in the production of something.
So for those of you that are listening that have ever seen, I think a really good example of that is Ruby. Well, Avatar also, but Ruby by Rooster Teeth. So season 1 and season 2 of Ruby, the creator of that was Montiome, and rest in peace Montiome, but he passed away before season 3 could ever air. And season 4 and on is definitely a massive difference in animation and technique and style. For those of I don't think you guys ever watched it, Jake and Malcolm Ruby, before, so you might not totally understand what I'm talking about. But for those of you that have seen it, the fighting techniques in season 1 and season 2 are gorgeous. Like, they're the fight choreographies are amazing, god tier, whatever. But then season 4 and on, that's no longer there. They switch the fighting styles, and they switch the way they like shoot characters and scenes, and in my personal opinion, I don't like it as much anymore. But what can you do, right? So I think that's like a good example of that.
It's like Transformers when Michael Bay didn't do the very latest one. Everyone's like, what the fuck? Or Star Wars, literally Star Wars.
Literally,
How come
Abrams
that's
came in.
where the Transformers franchise started to go downhill?
No, that's the one that got better.
Oh,
When Shia
okay.
LaBeouf left, and then Marky Mark came on, and
Hey, you shut
Marky
your
Mark.
mouth. Shia LaBeouf is a saint.
some Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf.
That's a deep cut.
All right. Any questions before we move on?
Nope, let's do it.
Let's keep going. All right, let's keep going further down this rabbit hole. So we had computer-assisted animation, right? So now let's talk about... All right, well, backtrack a little. So in Goblin Slayer, right, for those of you that watched it with us on the podcast, you notice that there's two different distinct animation styles. There's the 2D animation, which most of the part, it's fine. I enjoy it. I think that's what I'm used to. But then every now and then, right, they animate Goblin Slayer, specifically Goblin Slayer, nobody else on the main cast, mind you, Goblin Slayer and the goblins in CGI, right? So with that, going back to it, you have computer generated animation, and that's what they use for Goblin Slayer's models. That's what they use for the goblins models whenever they want to do certain stuff. Basically, the models are created in an XYZ axis format. You're able
Literally them T-posing.
Literally, you start them T-posing. Hey, what's good?
Yeah.
And the main difference between CGI and computer-generated animation, and computer-assisted is that in computer-generated, there is no, like, how do I say this? Pencil-to-paper drawings of the main character that are then plugged into the system, right? So it's not like you draw it out first, blah, 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 and then you throw it into the system, basically like copy
Scan it, you render it, and all
Right.
that nonsense.
So basically, this model is a blank model, and yes, obviously you can like look at a frame or a drawing or whatever, and that you could base the model off that. But the actual creator has to create the model from scratch, and then they can plug in colors, whatever, what have you, certain for aesthetic feels to the character, whatever. But the creator has to create it from scratch. So then, once this model is created, a really cool thing you could do is then within their environment, you can control through the software the way you want the model to be. So if you want the model to specifically follows the rules, the laws of physics in our world, for example, you can do that. If you want to maybe have them do crazy jumps, but then everything else is still normal, like maybe other characters are still behaving to the laws of physics, but like this character in particular doesn't necessarily have to behave in that in those rules, right? You can change that for that specific character. And
Let's turn gravity down to 0.25 for this guy.
yeah, and then they do massive flips and jumps, and you're like, oh my god, they're fucking like flips and tricks and shit. But yeah, it's
Splash, getting everybody all wet. SeaWorld. This ain't SeaWorld, sorry. Go ahead.
So then, like I talked about earlier, you can then also use motion capture, or simply manipulate the model by hand to do whatever you want it to do. So keyframes and tweening are still used in computer generated or CGI format, but the big takeaway is that these models were not drawn and then plugged into the system. Does that make sense?
It all started on the old memory drive.
Yeah. So then going back to Goblin Slayer, right? This is where I want you all to understand why I'm so frustrated sometimes when I see CGI. Is CGI a bad technique? No, not at all. CGI is actually a really awesome technique, super well done. It could be absolutely gorgeous. Excluding Disney and Pixar, because I want to focus more on the anime portion of this. You have amazing.
We'll attack Walt Disney later.
Yeah, we'll we have a good shot for that. Whenever you see, I don't know if you guys have seen it, Land of the Lustrous. That's an amazing freaking show, like awesome god tier show, but it's all CGI. And like I wouldn't have thought. I remember when I first started watching it, I already had this negative connotation in my mind that, oh god, it's CGI. I'm gonna be adverse to it, whatever. No, it was an amazing show, amazing story, amazing animation, gorgeous graphics. I think that was one of the few shows where if it was actually done in 2D animation, it would have done it a disservice. So that's not That's not to say that CGI is a bad technique, because it's not, and it's very cost efficient. But I think my main gripe a lot of the times is that you set up this world, right? So Goblin Slayer, for example. You set up this world where most of your frames are in 2D, all the characters are in 2D, whenever they're fighting they're in 2D. All of a sudden, you decide that the main character, right, gets to be drawn or animated in CGI, but for no apparent reason. At least surface level, right? So what I mean by that is there's a lot of moments in Goblin Slayer where Goblin Slayer he's doing his thing, he's like fighting, whatever, doing a lot of movements, blah, 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 in 2D. Okay, cool, that's fine. And then the next scene all of a sudden is in CGI when everybody else is still moving around, but they are also in 2D. So then it becomes this like jarring like juxtaposition between the two, and it's just it looks uncanny, and I think it just looks bad. But there's a multitude of things that could be an outcome of this, right? So I think maybe it's, like I said before, maybe it's who you have on hand at the time of you're animating this particular sequence. Maybe the person's like not comfortable in, I don't know, animating using computer assisted animation, but they're really solid in CGI. Well, shit, alright, I guess we're gonna animate this one sequence in CGI. Oh, you know what? Maybe we thought we didn't have enough money, so you know what? In certain sequences, let's just randomly throw in CGI just to lower the budget or whatever. Who knows? And you know, sometimes it's easier to animate it in CGI than it is actually drawing all the frames, right?
Yep.
So there's a multitude of factors that come into this, but and a big takeaway that I want you all to leave with is at least this foundation to be able to think about, because I think it's really fun to think about why certain shows go with certain animation styles. Because, like I said before, I think if an anime or a manga, light novel, what have you, the original source material wins their so-called quote-unquote lottery in their animation style, right? Maybe this anime you feel like should have been in CGI. Maybe this anime you felt like should have been in 2D, right? By winning that lottery, you get like a bump up in the quality of the anime. But let's say if, you know, the creator, the manga creator, had a different version, a different idea, a different vision for his anime, but then it's in a different style than what they were thinking, right? So then this becomes this clash. And I wonder if that's what's happened with Goblin Slayer. I don't know.
One thing that I think, at least for me, that like jars me and like pulls me out of it the same way it does for you, Daniel, is I think it's the shading on 3D versus 2D. There's like a lot of features where our brain is really good at like imaging depth, and when you see something that's all 2D and they've done the shading to show 3D in a 2D environment, and then you just stick in a 3D object without shading it right, like our brain will stitch together like that doesn't belong there. That's like off. Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. And so like there are plenty of good CGI and 2D animation blends that are possible. I'll just do like a quick plug if anyone wants to like deep dive on this further. Disney actually pioneered a animation technique called deep canvas, which is exactly doing this, where they take 3D and 2D and they interlace them, and it actually looks really good because they were very short sequences and they did shading right, and they had professional animators for every frame to clean it up and make it look good.
Right.
But people do this all the time and they can do it well, like you said. So if you're looking for a good example, like the opening crawl of Tarzan is deep canvas. That is 2D animation laced on top of a 3D environment.
Right. And oh man, I had a point that I wanted.
It's all about the shading.
I had a point that I wanted to bring up. You know, it might also be an attention grabber kind of technique, where it's like, oh, we want the audience to focus on Goblin Slayer. I'm using Goblin Slayer for example.
Yep.
You know, let's focus on him. Therefore, let's make it CGI. Oh, he stands out. The character or the audience looks at him, and he's gonna do something, right? Yep. I think, in my personal opinion, that's not the case most of the times. Very rarely is that the case, but you know, it could be. Who knows?
Yeah,
I wasn't the one who was behind the scenes animating all this crap. So
it's probably just easier to. Yeah, it's probably just easier for the motion and the movement. Like if they had this much time to, budget out these action scenes, and Goblin Slayer and the goblins are going to be doing a lot of the close-up action where there's like needing to do a lot of movements. Makes sense why they animate them that way. And at least for Goblin Slayer, it didn't completely pull me out of it. It's just there are times where it seems worse than others, and I think that's when you really notice it. But for overall, I mean, it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
going back to your point, Daniel. Like the whole, if you want someone to focus on them, turn them into 3D. That's like a cheap way to get out of it. There's like a bunch of other techniques, animation-wise, where you can like make their color pop.
Hair.
Exactly. Yeah, just color popping,
the one
shading.
With weird hair. Look at them.
So many other techniques, but if you need to cheap out and go to 3D, I get it. But if the point is to focus on someone else, there's a million other artistic techniques to get around that.
Yeah,
put them in the back of the classroom, looking out the window, aloof.
Yeah. Do you know why they do that? Actually, why they actually put them behind, like, let's say the main character close to the window at the very back of the room?
Is it so they don't have to animate other people?
Boom. Correct. Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's so that you don't have to animate anybody behind them. Why do that when you could just close up shot the person in the back, no one's behind them, only the lockers, boom, you're done. You're good to go.
And now animators have typecast themselves to only being able to talk about loner kids or kids that are just they don't really fit in.
They're just daydreaming all the time, and the teachers are getting mad at them. And
you just see me like walk into the boardroom of an animation studio and be like, so I want to talk to you about the teacher's pet. Like, this is going to be the character we follow. They sit in the very front of the class. They're always looking forward. They sit like dead center, and they're just like, get out, just leave.
And each of the co-students in that classroom, each of their classmates, has crazy hair, crazy color differentials, and each one's unique in their own way. Get out.
Get out of here.
And that's why there's no anime based in a Texas classroom, because there'd be 36 people in every class.
What's that?
3,000 kids.
Thing you were telling me about was Sword Art, where they just they were like literally shadows because they had to budget.
It was Ruby.
No, that was Ruby.
Oh, that was Ruby.
Yeah, that was Ruby, bro. Yeah, where it's like the main characters, the main like 7 or whatever, they have like their own animation or their own like style or whatever, but then everybody else was just a
literally
silhouette.
Just silhouettes.
No talking mouth. It was just a flat body, and I was
it was
like,
pretty bad.
I
thought it was really weird when they took the Peanuts teacher and just went wah 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 wah.
Well, there you go.
That's that deep cut for all of you boomers that are listening into the podcast.
Yeah, if I haven't offended you,
you remember the Peanuts teacher? Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Pepperidge Farm remembers. Never forget. Never forgive. But yeah.
I was like, I don't remember that part of the tagline.
Oh my god.
Yeah, dude, the Mandela effect in action or what?
Out for blood.
Pepperidge Farm has a bunch of war criminals in his basement. Never forgive.
Never forget, never forgive.
I got car batteries and nipple clamps. Never forget.
What else do I got for this? Yeah, so the main thing that I wanted you guys to know was to be able to form your own opinions on this, and then to learn more about when I mention the term CGI, what I'm mostly referring to, and most of the time I'm referring to just 3D models, whether or not they're on a 2D or 3D environment background. Regardless, I refer as using it to the models themselves, and maybe just different viewpoints on why animators decide to use a CGI technique versus hand-drawn techniques or computer-assisted techniques, right? There's just different methods, different styles, and at the end of the day, everybody has their own preferences, right? And like I said, it's not that CGI and anime can't be done, because it obviously can be. Land of the Lustrous, Arpeggio Blue Steel, I think those are really well done in CGI. Even stop motion, Thunderbolt Fantasy is really freaking good. But, at the end of the day, am I a huge stop motion fan? No. Am I a huge CGI fan? No. But, at least I want you guys to be equipped with this so you can form your own opinions and discuss it. Because I think this is really fun to discuss. I think it's more of a deep dive into the subject rather than just watching the show and be like, oh, yeah, I like this because the character's hot. Or, like, something stupid like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Because that's what I say. We always lead with that.
Because Jake's always like, he always messages me, and Jake's like, hey, is there fan service to the show? I'm like, yeah, there's a little bit. He's like, thank
Oh
God.
yeah,
Thank
you.
God.
That is exactly what I wanted. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just a character Jakes puts on for the podcast, but every night he just logs on to that deep web
And
stuff.
he
and
just goes to town. You know,
What is-
Every
34?
show, Rule 34.
Rule
Enter.
34. Every night.
every day.
Humans are disgusting. I'll end my case there.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
I'll never
Any
disagree.
questions, comments, concerns y'all got before we wrap it up for the night?
So, like, are you pretty much saying you didn't like Chicken Run? Because
Damn it!
Motion wasn't for you.
That
Daniel.
was going to be my sign-off plug. I said, and you heard it here first, folks.
Nice.
Daniel hates Chicken Run.
Nice. No, and like I said, I think if you can be done really well. I think stop motion can be done. But is it my go-to preference for watching a show? No. So,
Watch our listener count tick up because I just sent out a tweet that's like, Daniel hates Wallace and Gromit.
Daniel says Chicken Run is the worst movie ever?
question mark? Exclamation point?
Yeah, it's just got the thumbnail of us going like, YouTube, feed us into the algorithm.
Feed me
Turn
that
out your
algorithm.
Give us that money.
But yeah, anything else?
Nah, I think we're good.
All right, then. That's going to be it for this episode, y'all. We would like to thank Joakim Carew for the use of his music in our podcast. The intro is Dreams and the outro is Lowrider. Links to his contact info will be in our show notes. If you enjoy listening to us, please make sure to rate us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If video format is more your thing, then make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Weeb the People Podcast. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, rate every one of those videos. Talk to us. We enjoy being able to discuss these anime stuff with you guys. It's really fun. Check out our website, weebthepeople.com. Make sure to follow our Twitter handle at weeb_the_people, Facebook page, Weeb the People, an anime podcast, and our Instagram, Weeb the People Podcast. And if you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to DM us on any of those social medias or email us at weebthepeoplepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening. I am your host, Daniel.
The air quality is so bad. I have been living in the Breaking Bad yellow tint life for the past 3 days, and it probably won't end until next Sunday. So fucking get your shit together. Climate change is real. My name is Malcolm. I am suffering.
Stop doing gender reveals with TNT, guys. Just stop.
Swear.
Please. Who could have seen that going wrong?
Right.
Treasure Planet was the best execution of Deep Canvas and one of the best well-written movies of Disney's history. My name is Jake.
And yet it flopped. Feels bad.
It fucking flopped because Disney execs only care about money and not art. At me.
Did you mean Atlantis or Treasure Planet?
No, Treasure
No,
Planet.
Treasure Planet.
Cool.
This has been Weeb the People, and have a great evening.